Hi, I'm Artis Wodehouse, and I'm here in the Bronx in my music studio. And with me is Louis Huivenaar, and he's a master restorer of harmoniums and reed organs. And he has come over to work on my instrument that I'm going to be using for a recording, and he will tell you more about it later. Louis is going to give a discussion of how he became a reed organ restorer, harmonium restorer, and his background and what he does in Europe. His primary work is in Europe, but he comes to the United States periodically to do work for various people, including myself. So that's pretty much the setup for Louis, and I want to turn this discussion over to Louis. Louis, I gave an introduction about you from my perspective, which is that we are here with harmoniums and reed organs, but you do much more than that, and I'd like to start off with you telling everybody what the extent of the work that you do and where you do it is worldwide.
Well, to be honest, it's not only harmoniums and reed organs, it is also the celesta, which was an invention by the most famous harmonium builder in the world, Victor Mustel. So the celesta is involved completely, and I travel quite far all over the world, except for Russia and the Arabic countries, because there I don't have clients. Even a museum in China I had to do a restoration. So that means you're in the east part of the world, and then you go to the Southern America, you go to Australia or you go back to Middle, North, Alaska. Wow, the Scandinavian, even the island of Madeira, many times. Of course England, Scotland, Ireland, and probably Europe too. So I'm a bit around the world, and it is crazy to see, the word crazy to use, that people really love that instrument. An invention from the 19th century. So in that case I can say yes, I'm almost all over the world, and I try to do the job like I do it in your apartment. And sometimes you need some extra stuff, so I ask, please you can send the instrument to my workshop in the country. So they bring it by airplane, vessel, whatever. Well, that's the start.
Mm-hmm. Louis, can you start with telling us how you came to take on this unusual profession that you now have?
Well, it starts at the Salvation Army.
Good.
As a boy in the 50s, I probably in a bit later, probably 58, I was sitting there and of course singing and clapping hands there and all the songs, and one of the ladies was playing a reed organ. And suddenly you heard that noise, bang! One of the bells was broken, so she hit the floor with one of her feet, and I was laughing. I started to laugh. So the lieutenant of the community, or the celebration, or how you call that, or fellowship, he turned around and he said, "Shh, Louis, you may not laugh about that. That hurts." But I had to laugh. And after the service, I went to that instrument and I said, "What is that?" Well, there it's born.
I see.
There it's born. And I've kept that in the head for several years because I went for study, and I had to do a lot of other studies because I should become a gynecologist. I say it the right way, of course. Yes. And so my studies went all for doctor and then gynecologist, and it changed completely at the end of the 60s, beginning 70s. It went a complete other way. So I became a teacher finally, and just a year before I became a teacher, a full teacher, I found a reed organ somewhere in a home of people, and they asked me, "We want some little money." I said, "Okay," and I took it home and I started.
Well, it seems to me that these are related because they take a lot of detail, a lot of fine muscle coordination, and thought. and a certain inventiveness that you have to apply to situations on the fly. And that's what I observe what you do here and probably elsewhere. So then what happened? You ended up teaching school, and then how did you hop off into this as a full-time profession?
Well, I started with that already in 1975, and for minor things, just to open one and to look into it, and I said, okay, it looks easy. Of course, you will learn from every instrument that's not true. But because of all the other skills you already have had since the, I think in the, around 64, 63, you already were developing skills in such a good way that you could step into something which was quite easy. So I stepped in, I made my mistakes, and learned the quick way not to do that again anymore, because you already noticed there are ethics in work. And these ethics came later up, many years later, up in the organizations of restoration. Suddenly you have to sign a protocol of ethics of restoration. If you step beside, they can go to court. Wow, I did that already. I started with that already in the 70s, in the early 70s with that protocol. But nobody was talking about that. So you stepped into it around 75, and then 76. I became a full-time teacher, and still also a job in the business, but it was too much. So I had to make a decision, full-time teacher, and then got a lot of time back because I had no work to do anymore in a business. I made my own business, and being a teacher full-time. So I could work too many hours in a week. That was too much, but it was a quick way of learning, because you needed to learn quick.
Yeah, right.
There was no other option.
The question I have is, did you have to study with someone else in order to develop these skills, or did you have to learn by doing, essentially, learn just by taking apart instruments and looking at documents? How did you learn how to become good at this?
Well, it sounds very high-minded what I'm going to say, but we have in Amsterdam, I'm born there in the Netherlands, and we have a saying, look, that means from your view, two right hands. If I say, look, that means two left hands, then people say, uh-oh, he can't do anything. So I said, I had to do it all on my own, because I had to learn from the instruments. And my best teacher was François Alexandre Debain, the inventor of the word harmonium, the harmonium in Paris, how to build up, how the sequence in the instrument is, how the notations are. He was my teacher because I had to study his instruments, and how to make reeds and how to remake reeds, and it was amazing that somebody who is dead can tell you a lot of his knowledge. He found out. So in that sense, I don't know if that's the right word in English, but I'm an autodidact in that word.
Right.
In that work. But I never studied a book because people came to me. How did you do? How do you know that? Can I have teaching from you?
No idea.
Do you give lessons? Because they knew I was also a teacher in manual graphic art. I was also a teacher in health. That's the other study from being a doctor. So I was a teacher I was a teacher also in metalworking, in woodworking, and I have all my degrees, but especially all the degrees in the manual or graphic world, from printing till bookbinding till the most highest level or whatsoever. And I thought, wow, did I do that all? It was too much, so I stayed with harmoniums, reed organs, celestas, and then comes another thing up. In 1978 I built my first little pipe organ because I thought, it would be nice also to do that. I started with a portative, but therefore I had a very amazing, beautiful book found from Hans Hickman, 1936, Das Portativ in German, the portative, and that gave me a lot of background information of the Middle Ages. So in 1978 I started to build my first portative. But how do you do that? So I made my drawing from what I have seen in books, organ teaching books, and I went to an organ builder and I said, what is this? Is this okay or not? Say me the truth. He says, one word is wrong. I said, thank you. And I said to him, where do I need to start? He said, what do you mean? I said, can you give me some lessons to start? He said, okay, 1 or 2 Saturdays. Well, 2 Saturdays I started and I never came back because that was the moment I started to build pipe organs. 1 year later I had my first assignment. Can you do research to the Middle Age pipe organs before the year 1200? And I said in my how do you say it in good English? Oh yes, of course I can do that. Gosh, what I did was awful. I had to go to libraries, I had to step in.
Yeah.
And then one important thing happened. I went to a special library from a university. They knew I was a teacher at the manual graphic high school, and they gave me a copy of an original manuscript.
Oh, lovely, lovely.
Well, that manuscript was written by a monk, Theophilus, Diversarum Artium Schedula, and with that work, that was diplomatic translated and critical translated, and I had to do a translation over it from Latin and German to my language, so I did do that, and I found details behind that I could make these organ pipes. Well, it started immediately, questions from America, Israel, everywhere they came from. Oh, can you make these pipes? How do you do that? I said, please ask me to make them. So I had to make them, and that was beside harmoniums and reed organs, and later on the celestas. So you became also an organ builder for special things. And then suddenly the question came, can you make normal pipe organs? I said, well, if I can make these one, I can make the other ones too. And it happened. You make your mistakes, you remake the stuff, and suddenly you have a professional pipe organ only after a few years. Because all your studies together can help you to develop another kind of work. And it works. But you need time, that's all.
Right, right.